the conversation. It's the conversation. Y'all ready? Y'all ready? Let's go. Let's go. No filter, no restrictions. You about to get my opinion in its purest form. So my words, don't try to spin them. What I said is what I said, and what I said I meant it. The gloves are off now when I'm coming out swinging. So engage in verbal combat, but you better be ready. Cause this here for me is light work, even if the topic's heavy. I'm ready for it all with no running from nothing. You just take the time to digest what I put in, no rushing. But time is moving, don't waste it. You want the real, come and face it. Come sit and talk to me if you want it straight without a chaser. And it might burn a little when you step on up to taste it, but it's nothing harsh, I promise. Just a little conversation. It's the conversation. It's the conversation.
Wondering what you were gonna do.
All right. Well, first, oh Lord, what just happened? Hold on.
We're on.
I know we're on, but that was a tragedy. So, welcome back to the conversation with Harold Dave. You'll notice that Dave is not with us today, but we will have a guest with us today to talk about a couple of things. We're going to debate a little bit. It's not going to be a knockdown, drag out fight. We're going to debate a little bit. We're going to talk about politics as we do on this show all the time, but we always do it in the most respectful manner. And I think that's what a lot of people like about when we do it on here. Okay. So without further ado, let's have our guest Josh go ahead and step on the screen. Josh is here. Thank you for joining us today, Josh.
How you doing?
Yeah, you guys might want to hold your applause. We don't know what he's going to say yet. No, I'm just kidding. Josh is a pretty good guy. I've known him for a long time. So we're going to jump right into it because I know we started late and Josh has a lot of things going on. Let's just talk about the presidential debate. The vice presidential debate that was last night. I would like to start off by saying whether you're for Trump or whether you're for Kamala Harris, that's a whole different thing. There's some back and forth that's justifiable there. This is how I remember presidential debates being. And a lot of people in the chat that I was watching was like, can these two just run for president? And I think it's not that they prefer Waltz over Kamala or JD over, well, it might be JD over Trump. It was the way that they were handling the communication to each other. There was still a lot of a question of voting on both sides for certain things, but we'll get into that. Let's get into Josh. How did you feel about the debate and what did you take from it?
The vice presidential
Yes.
debate.
Yes.
I thought it was civilized. I thought it's more in line with the other presidential debates we've seen in the past. They both agreed to the rules beforehand and generally stuck by them. Some of the moderators kind of fact checked JD Vance a little bit until he called him out on it, but at least they were civil. I actually said that I would rather see both of these individuals run as president together, one being president, one being vice president, two main presidents. But yeah, I thought it was a good debate, and I thought there was a winner overall. But I don't think I can't really say anything bad about either one of them, if I'm being perfectly honest. So they're both respectful and both presidential, as I would call it, unlike the other two.
Okay. And Harold, how about you?
I mean, I can echo some of those same sentiments, and my thing is, usually they're rehashing some of the same stuff they've always said. Let's revisit what we've already been interviewed. We've said in interviews, we said it on stages in different places in different states. But I can appreciate the civility of it. However, facts are facts. And I think everyone should be held accountable to the same standard at the end of the day. So with that said, I can appreciate that they didn't overrun the two moderators, because I feel that if it had been a presidential debate, those two moderators probably would have been overrun, just as some of the men moderators were in the presidential debate. But in either case, like I said, I can appreciate it in one respect, but like I said, I just felt that all I was hearing was more of the same and nothing new and or different.
And I think that's also could be caused by one, the questions from the moderator, and two, you can't really make someone stay on question. I actually, I heard it on both sides, one more than the other. I'm not going to say which more because then people will assume that when a certain question was asked, but they did what they're supposed to as politicians. If you know your answer is going to be wrong, you pivot, right? And people go, oh my God, they're avoiding the question. No, like Dave mentioned last show, You're supposed to pivot as the president. What are you supposed to say? I'm terrible at this question? No, you're supposed to pivot. So if someone asks you, hey, you believed that this person was incapable of being president 3 years ago. Why are they capable now? The open borders, that's what you're supposed to do. So I can't fault JD for that. He didn't want to speak for Donald Trump, which who would want to, and he spoke for himself. Now, we didn't get to talk after the presidential debate. How did you feel about that one? I'll start with you, Harold, this time, and then we'll go to Josh.
Well, again, when we look at the presidential debate, things got a little out of hand. There was, you saw immediately at the very beginning, she approached him to shake his hand and try to, I guess you can say, try to be cordial. But as time went on, things got a little, toasty, shall we say. But again, when you're talking about debates, you're going to have certain accusations, certain things that are thrown out, factual or not, and it makes it not an environment where really it's going to be beneficial to the American people, because now you're wasting energy, you're wasting oxygen, as opposed to trying to create a substantive discussion so that people will make a informed decision as to who they should vote for.
And I think that's where Josh, tell me if I'm misquoting you. I think your premise is the vice presidential debate was professional. The presidential debate was personal.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I'll be honest. I think Kamala won. I think she didn't let her emotions get the best of her like Trump did. Like, she said things to get under Trump's skin, and it worked. He let his emotions get the best of him. Granted, like some people say, he was arguing with both the moderators and Kamala. I'm not going to go that far. I heard the rumor that Kamala had freaking pearl earrings that told her the answers. I don't believe that. Somebody jokingly said if Tim Walz comes out with earrings on, then we know it's true. But I thought Kamala did do really well, surprisingly.
Kamala?
I wasn't expecting that. Not knocking her, but I mean, she did better than I thought she was going to do. Let's just leave it at that. But she also did a good job getting under Trump's skin. And if he would have controlled his emotions a little bit better, his performance would have been better. But with the presidential debate, you didn't really see them taking jabs at each other. I heard Tim say Trump quite a bit. But beyond that, I mean, J.D. Walsh did a good idea of deflecting that and not contradicting Trump. They straight up asked him during the debate. I'm digressing a little bit, but they straight up asked him like, "Oh, well, do you think Trump lost the election?" He said that he won, blah 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 blah, and J.D. Vance didn't even answer that question. He like circumvented it really well, and that was good to him because one, he didn't contradict Trump. Two, he didn't say yay or nay. Yes, he won. No, he lost. You know what I mean? So I thought he did a really good job.
And you know what? On the name of on Kamala Harris, I've pronounced her name wrong so many times because I've heard her name pronounced wrong so many times that I start saying
Kamala. Yeah, we don't.
Yeah. And first of all, I don't want to say Kamala because when I know who Kamala is, and
That's
so
arrested.
yeah, and it's not a very good depiction. But to my point for Josh is I've heard her name wrong so many times that sometimes I regurgitate the name wrong, so I get that. Now, the two questions, the two I questions. Oh my God. The first one is immigration. That's always the heavy topic. It's going to be the heavy topic. I feel like any question that was asked, immigration got thrown back in there. How do you feel about the price gouging of stores that, companies that produce goods? And it would go back to immigration. How do you feel that both candidates in the presidential debate or the vice presidential debate handled the topics of immigration? I'll start with you, Josh.
I didn't really. I only caught the very end of the vice presidential debate, so I can't really say too much about that. Now, Trump always goes back to building a wall and how I think I even heard Tucker Carlson say that they gave $10 million to illegal immigrants to build houses and free cell phones, and that's why and I don't know how true that is. I don't think it is true entirely. But at the same time, like a lot of the immigration laws that are in place now were in place when Obama was president. You know what I mean? Like I don't think. And like the other day, I was actually at the southern border in Texas for work, and I was like, "Oh shit, he built a wall?" No, it's been here. It's always been here. You know what I mean? Like there's always been something there. So it's like I don't know what Trump's trying to do, but I mean, obviously, like he makes every illegal immigrant out to be this horrible person. That's not necessarily the case, but I mean, I feel like the truth lies between what each of them are saying. I don't think we'll just refer to her as Mrs. Harris or the VP Harris, we'll just call her that, because I don't want to pronounce her first name wrong again. But I don't think she wants open borders per se, and I don't think Trump's hates every single immigrant either. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, Trump resorts back to like what he's been saying the entire time, and then I don't really know what her stance is on it. But at the same time, I don't think she's going to take too stark of a stance just because that is a lot of support for her not being as bad about immigration as Trump is.
So do you feel from what you're saying, and again, don't quote me if I'm wrong, you feel that Trump's stance on immigration is not his true belief, but he's playing to a constituents?
No, I think it is his true belief, but whether or not he actually follows, like whether or not he's actually going to legit build a real wall or be as stringent upon immigration as he says he is. I mean, I think the tariffs are going to stay in place, and I think the purpose of that is to bring more jobs here. But it seemed like a lot of people just, instead of importing it from China, started importing it from Mexico because it's cheaper to drive it than it is to fly it here or get it here over a boat.
The problems with that people don't understand with tariffs is that works on goods, but it doesn't work on companies who can have their infrastructure in the Philippines or India
Right.
and pay those and pay those prices. But you know what defeats walls? Tunnels. Harold, how do you feel that the? Go
I
ahead.
mean, that's a lot more work. I can't blame anybody from Mexico that wants to come here. I'd want to do the same
Yeah.
thing. And one of my best friends, actually, in the military, came here illegally when he was 3, but he got his citizenship, and now he's a captain in the Army. And that's the American dream right there. Now, does every single immigrant do that? No. But is every single immigrant a rapist or a killer? Also no. You know what I mean? So, to be fair, I live in Southern California. I'm in San Antonio now. There's a lot of people here. Traffic is always a problem. Is that solely because of immigration? No. But I do think that the fact that there are so many people here, that's a huge reason why prices are the way they are. In addition to
Uh,
the
One thing that you are definitely correct on is the crime illegal immigrants at the estimated size and how many there are in this country commit a percentage of crime that is a far cry less than people who have lived there naturally their entire lives. So you're,
Right.
you're right on that part. Harold, what about you? The handling of the immigration talks.
Well, first of all, when you look at the whole conversation and concept of a wall, and we've even seen images of people scaling the wall. You mentioned tunnels, but people have scaled the wall. It's penetrable in many respects or in different ways, and I think that's to assail that as the only solution. And I didn't hear a comprehensive plan. I only hear Trump saying wall, which again does not help the issue of immigration, because again, at the end of the day, whether it's a wall, whether it's a tunnel, whether they're scaling, and the majority of immigrants come here by what? Plane and boat. They come here through legal ports of entry. So we're making a smaller percentage of individuals the major focus of this issue, which I think, again, we need to make sure we know who's coming into the country and going, crossing our borders. I get that. But from my perspective and my analysis, I think that the issue of immigration lies in the laps of Congress, not the president, because the president can only sign things into law after they've been passed by Congress. And when you had a comprehensive bill that was going to put more border agents there, put more funding and put more resources there, it got shot down. It didn't get passed. The whole issue of, it had funding for Israel and Ukraine. And even when they stripped that out of it, it still got shot down. So, is it really a true desire to pass this bill and get this issue behind us? No, because we wanted to make it we wanted to politicize it so that we could make it an issue, so that now we can keep that certain aspect of the base riled up until what? Post-election, and then even post-election. Because when we go back and look at the numbers of immigration, even in 2017, 2018, and 2019, were gradually going up. It was only because of COVID, when we had to shut down the border because of this pandemic, that the numbers actually drastically went down. And then once we got on the other side of COVID, for the most part, things can begin to ramp up again. But, the bottom line is, it's an issue that Congress can only solve, because executive orders can only go so far.
It's a thing that you and Dave have both talked about on the show. Everybody pays attention to the president. They don't pay attention to this congressman that you're electing because Congress has a lot of ability to do the things that people want the president to do. And another thing, when we talk about statistical numbers, you just brought up something that a lot of people don't think about. When they talk about the border numbers going down, no one brings up that we closed the borders due to COVID, which helped the numbers dip down. So you do a little digging. Everything has layers, and when you only stop at the top layer, you get a lot of the conversations that you talk to, the barbershop conversations, and people that they don't peel back the layers to the onion. Now, who do you go ahead, Josh?
Now, I'm not going to disagree with anything you said. I agree with him. And correct me if I'm wrong. Basically, you see the wall as merely like a band-aid for the problem. It's not going to solve the real issue.
No.
But I would like to see either A, make legal, and I don't think I'm disagreeing with you by saying this, A, make legal immigration easier so people don't have to come here illegally, or B, make other countries better so they may not want to come here. But that's probably the harder problem to make.
There's two problems with that. One, the first thing you said, Dave and Harold has said a lot of times, we need to fix the laws on how to become legal, because to seek asylum in a country, you have to get to that country, right?
Yeah, we got to cross the border.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the second thing you said, darn it, I had it. What was the second thing you said?
Either A, make the other countries better so they don't want to come here,
Yes.
which that's a different problem.
Yeah.
Cartels, especially in Mexico, right? Or B, make the process easier to come here legally.
Right. So the second thing you said, now we talked about this as well. Every time we say illegal immigrant, there's a sect of this country that only think Mexico, as if they're the only illegal immigrants coming to this country. It's like you might need to check out the docks in New York if you think it's only Mexicans, right?
Or Florida, yeah.
Yes. So one of the things that you said about making other countries better, when we try to do that, what happens? You talk about the dollar amount that you're spending, and people are opposed to that.
Right.
So it's like it's hard to have it. Right. It's hard to have it both ways. Speaking of taxes, who do you feel is going to help the economy get back to a better position if they're elected president? Start with you, Josh.
Let me lead with this. I don't think the current state of the economy is directly anybody's fault. I don't think it's Trump's. I don't think it's Biden's. I think a lot of it has to do with COVID, and I think a lot of it has to do with the war in Ukraine. And possibly even the war in Afghanistan and Iraq that President Bush started, right? Or didn't really start, but it began under his time in office, right? Now, me, as somebody that has a TSP, somebody that works for the government, being in the military, like I always see bigger pay raises under a Republican president typically, and I feel like I remember when Trump got elected, my TSP shot up, my stocks shot up, right? And he's also a businessman in New York. So, and he also did his best to try to lower taxes. And granted, this is not a good comparison because I was divorced under Obama and I was divorced under fireworks. And I was divorced under.
I didn't do that. I don't know why you said the word divorce, fireworks.
No, I saw with the thumbs up. But no, both times when I filed my taxes under the last two Democratic presidents, I was divorced. So that's probably why I owed money. It may not be because of them. However, I did see the biggest pay raises or I owed far less money or I had a tax return under a Republican president. But that could be because I was married before and I had more.
With the military, it's kind of tricky because you see those differences based on pay grades, right? You might not see a biggest difference when you're a private as when you're a captain because here's the thing, and I'll break this down for my 20 years that I was in. I did get more pay increases under a Republican president, but the thing that was different was under Barack Obama, I had the biggest pay raise. So if you put that in numbers, I might have had 2 pay raises during Bush's administration, and I only had 1 during Obama's, but the gap that it was so significant that I could feel it.
Right.
So that's always a thing. It kind of statistically is right in both directions. So you got to play those numbers of, hey, did I get more pay raises or was it a significant pay raise? So that's where I get into.
Well, one thing that I worry about is like I know Kamala or VP Harris, the vice president's plan, or what I've heard is she wants to give like $25,000 like a credit for new first-time home buyers, $10,000 for something else in reference to taxes. Like that money has to come from somewhere. So I feel like the middle class, especially, not so much the elites, not so much the poor's, but the middle class is going to be feeling the pain of that the most. And I don't know what that's going to look like. So.
Okay.
If it's a tax write-off, I mean, I think she's looking to increase taxes on those that make, I think, $500,000 or more per year. So that's where those funding for that particular program would be coming from my understanding. Now, when we look at the economy as a whole, and I can't just look at tax breaks, I also look at have to look at the fact that every modern day conservative president has left us in some type of financial downturn. Now, in this last one, okay, I got a little bit of a bump after the tax break in a paycheck. But then at the end of that term, when we hit that economic cycle where we're starting to go down, my retirement took a significant 5-figure hit. So my tax break didn't give me the same results as what I lost in my retirement, which took 3 years to get back to where I was prior to that whole hit. So I look at it in the long run.
Sure.
And how it impacted me at that point in time. If I was going into retirement, I had people when that downturn hit that were on the verge of retiring and had to extend, or whether they applied for drop or whether they did whatever they did to try to get another job or keep the same job that they had. So I look at things not just from my perspective, because I know how it hit me and I'm looking at the long game.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm not going over feelings because I felt better. Yeah, I like more in my paycheck when I'm taking it home.
Sure.
However, I got to look at the fact that if I'm getting ready to retire in 5, 10, 15, 20 years,
Mhm.
okay, how much of that now I got to work even harder now, put in more hours to try to hopefully get it back up. And you don't know how long that's going to take, because if you don't have a sound recovery plan, now it's going to take even longer to recoup that before you can start moving forward again.
And
So
what
that's part of the challenge that I saw. Now, when it comes to you all that serve in the military, and much respect to
Hold on a
each
second.
of you.
Hold on a
Um,
second. Hold on a second, Harold. Lisette Cornegate, thank you for becoming a member. Thank you, Lisette. But I think Josh wanted to ask or a question or respond to something you said immediately. Go ahead,
oh,
Josh.
go ahead. Go ahead,
now
Josh.
what time period are you referring to? Like what year were you talking about? Was that 2020? Do you think COVID
Yeah.
has a factor? Do you think COVID
Yeah,
was
once the financial downturn hit, because remember the stock market crashed. A
Right.
lot of it crashed because of the uncertainty of how the whole COVID pandemic was being handled by us,
sure?
more so than anything else.
Yeah.
So had it been handled differently or properly, then we may not have had the stock market crash the way it did,
Yeah, but
and then we may have been able to not have to experience what we experienced.
right. Do you think it would have been different if we had if Obama was president during that time? Do you think we would have survived it better, or a Democratic president, I should say?
Oh, I'd like to answer that. I don't think it doesn't matter if it was a Democratic president. I just think it matters who was president. The thing that, and you can hate Bill Clinton for all you want. The thing, not you, Josh, I'm just saying that out to the audience. The thing that Bill Clinton and Obama did that I like, I'm just going to pick those two Democratic presidents. Bill Clinton brought in an economist to run the economy, and he listened to that economist.
An expert,
One of
right?
the,
That's
right,
what Henry Ford did. That's why he was so
right.
successful, because he
One of
surrounded
the
himself with people that knew what the hell they were doing.
one of the things Obama got crap from when he was building his cabinet was people's like, why are you picking all these people that disagree with you? And he said, I don't want a bunch of people in the room that just agree with whatever I said.
Sure.
Their ability to listen to the people that they put in place would have helped him handle. Now, would have been a perfect handling? We don't know that. But their ability to handle it would have been better. I don't care if it's Trump or Chump. You have him in a president in office that didn't listen to the advice of even the people he put in place to give him the advice. And I think that's a part of leaving out his personal issues and how he acts and all that out of it. Just that part of not listening to the people that you put in place to advise you helped him be ineffective in handling that. Now, I know, Harold, you got a more critical way of responding to that. That's just from my take. You can't put people in place to advise you and then you don't listen to your advisors at all.
Yeah.
Harold?
Well, basically, I mean, you're paying them to do nothing. If you suck up oxygen, why not just let them go and you do what you do? But again, sometimes ego does get in the way. Sometimes a person's attitude and the fact that they have to be right all the time. And I try to get away from that whole name calling. I heard, you hear narcissist, autocrat, and all that kind of foolishness. Bottom line is, people are who they are. And his personality, unfortunately, and I'm speaking about Trump, does not allow him to listen to anyone, but he desires to be listened to by everyone. But what I was going to say earlier also about the military, my concern with the military, and I wish more of those of you that serve began to really ask Congress, how is it that 60% of the defense spending goes to contractors as
Yep.
opposed to those serving?
Mm.
And I think that shows where our priorities are.
Mm.
We got things twisted in this country when it comes to priority. The same thing when it comes to education versus incarceration.
Sure.
Cost you $10,000 to educate, $30,000 to $50,000 to incarcerate. We got a priority problem in this country, and this is why we are where we are. Our taxes can be, because of how rich we are, our taxes can be so low that you won't even feel it.
Right.
If, one, we close loopholes, but two, if we get our priorities straight. But we're not focused on that. We're focused on these other non-issues, really, or insignificant issues. I won't say none, but insignificant issues compared to where we could be if everybody was unified and moving in the same direction.
Well, and like speaking of contractors, right? So I just toured a building called the TLAM here, which is like the Theater Lead Agent for Medical Material, right? 10 people there are all contractors. They have like a 5-year contract, and they do get paid significantly. And they do typically go with the lowest bidder, not always. Sometimes they go with who's best for the job, right? But literally the building that they own in San Antonio for this, they did own it. They gave it back to the city of San Antonio. And rather than continue to own it, they've been paying them $3 to $4 million every year for the last 20 years just to lease this building. And it's decisions like that that's like, why? Maybe they thought they were going to move and that didn't happen. But that's literally what I learned today as we toured the building. And I'm like,
wow,
doing this, like this doesn't, and even the guys working there don't agree, but they're not the ones making those decisions. It's people up here, but it's like, it's decisions like that hurt us in the long run. And there are a lot of contractors, and yeah, I didn't know it was 60%, but I believe it. I'm not going to dispute that.
I mean, look, I've been to
I'll say
Iraq.
last time I checked, it was 60%. I was
sounds,
hoping it decreased, but
it sounds right. I believe it. Yeah.
If you're a fueler driving a truck in Iraq when I was deployed from Kuwait to Mosul, what you're going to make compared to the civilian driving the fuel truck from Mosul to Kuwait.
$100,000 a year, easy.
Bare minimum.
Yeah. You're not in the States less than 30 days.
Hey, here's the most important part. Non-taxed.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most important part. Now, I'm not hating on them. Hey, get it how you live. If somebody's going to offer that,
right.
That's what you're going to do, right? So, that's what you would do. Is there anything that you would like to throw out there as a question, Josh?
This is just kind of a neutral question that I just want to pick his brain on because he seems like he is an educated person. I don't want to say the word seems. Who would...
Wait, hold on. It's my fault, Josh, because I have the ticker tape up. So let me put his credentials up.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Don't do that.
No release board, though, I'm assuming. No, I'm kidding. Who would you say, based on our history, it would be the top 5 best and the top 5 worst presidents? I like picking people's brains about this.
Oh, God.
You know what's so funny? He's laughing because we're supposed to do an episode on everyone's personal Mount Rushmore presidents. I think so let's do this.
You can make a top 4. I'll give you one, too.
Well, top 4, that's Mount... Wait a minute.
That would be Mount Rushmore.
Okay, well, let's do this.
But his Mount
Rushmore... I may not agree with the Mount, though.
Wait. Let's do this. Let's do this because we have an episode coming up and you're going to cheat on Dave. Let's just do your top 2 best and top 2 worst.
Okay, that's fair.
Oh, man. I'm a little different. I like Theodore Roosevelt.
I would agree.
That's number 1
because of many of his stances and positions. The fact that one of the things that a lot of people don't know is he was the one that saved football in America.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Because football was because of all the injuries, deaths that were occurring because they had no equipment.
People were dying in football.
And
when football
literally, he basically threatened to shut it down. They had it, and that's where the NCAA was birthed out of his efforts. The other, God.
I know what he's trying to do. He's trying not to pick someone recent, so he's thinking.
Yeah. I'm trying to go backwards, not forward. But I would then say FDR.
I've heard a lot of people. FDR was president for like 4 terms, right?
Yeah. So which term, right?
Right.
Well, but the fact that he was a visionary, and that he looked at a long-term strategy to bring us out of the economic downturn that we were dealing with at the time. And so that's one of the things that attracted me to him. Now, again,
to piggyback on that, that's why Franklin FDR is in my top one, because when he was trying to enforce policies, he wasn't thinking about, and this is the way it just seemed with him, it wasn't, let me see what I can do while I'm in this term that makes me look good. He was thinking, hey, what can I do that no matter if I'm here or not, it's going to work for everybody. And he was really into that. So he'd be my number one. And then I'm going to put every president that was helpful to the civil rights movement as my number two. So, I'm going to put all of them in that.
You got LBJ and
LBJ, okay. John F. Kennedy. I'm going to put them all in that, because during that time, that's when it's been the most gap in advancement for minorities and women. Were during those periods. Now, go ahead. What's your two favorite, Josh? If you said Trump, I'm cutting your feed.
No. I'm gonna choose different people. I probably wouldn't put FDR in my top five, but I would put the person after him, Truman. I would put him up there, largely because, well, he's from Missouri, so am I. But like as bad as like the atomic bomb was, like I don't necessarily agree with like doing that. It was effective. It worked, and we rebuilt Japan, and they have a lot of the things I think they have today, Toyota Supras, whatever, because of us. So I would put Truman up there, and then Lincoln would be up there for sure. Ending. Granted, people misquote him all the time, right? There's a quote he said, and correct me if I'm wrong. He said, people just say half the quote. They say, if I could end the war by not freeing any slaves, I would, which he did say that. His goal was not to end slavery, it was to end the Civil War. But what he said was this: if I could end the war without freeing any slaves, I would. If I could end the war by freeing all the slaves, I would. If I could end the war by freeing some slaves and not others, I would. His main goal was to end the war. However, it worked in ending slavery, that's why he's credited for a lot of it. And don't get me wrong, it worked. I'm happy with it. But Grant was largely instrumental in that. Lee was the better general, but Grant, at least he won by men, money, and machines, kind of like Russia's in Ukraine. Like they got the numbers, they got the people, they got the funding. Go, who cares? They lost more people overall, but they had the resources, whereas the South didn't. Thank God,
Well, it's also, I think. Oh my God! Now I'm gonna. Was it Frederick Douglass or W.E.D. Du Bois? Why am I mixing this up?
Douglass was Republican. He was African.
No. That had the walk with Lincoln. Harold, which one was it? Ah, darn it! They're not even the same time.
No, W.E.D. Du Bois was early 1900s, so it had to be Frederick Douglass.
Yes, Frederick Douglass. So one of the things in his memoirs he talked about is you like you're saying that quote, Josh. But the reason why he turned so hard on freeing all the slaves, he had this walk in the park. He talks about this walk in the park with Frederick Douglass. And the conversation they had, it was like he looked at him, and after that conversation, he's like, how can this be enslaved?
Sure. Well, how can anybody be enslaved? You know what I mean?
But when it's the thing that happens when, I always use the example of one of the reasons John McCain lost because he didn't hate Obama. He when he met Obama and he talked to Obama, he's like, I can't hate this guy. So
he defended Obama.
Yeah. And so that was part of his downfall. Romney tried to get on the hate Obama train, but it wasn't convincing enough. So that happened as well. Now we got to get into, and we're gonna wrap it up because Josh, I know you got to go. We're gonna wrap it up with you. Now let's get into your two worst. Now let's not get low hanging fruit. It can't be anybody recent. Let's not kick a man while he's down. All right. Okay. So. All right, go ahead. Who's your worst two, Harold?
I thought you said Josh.
Oh, Josh. I'm sorry.
Wait,
here. Look, I'll put Josh on the spot. They can't be recent and they can't be black.
I wouldn't put Obama as the worst. I definitely wouldn't. I wouldn't even put
I'm just screwing with you.
I wouldn't put him in the bottom 10, honestly.
I know. I'm just screwing with you. I know you don't think like that.
I'd probably put the guy right after Lincoln.
The idiot
Jackson.
Basically said, "Hey,
Jackson.
All this stuff Lincoln did, forget about it."
Yeah, I would put the guy right after Lincoln and the guy right after Kennedy.
Johnson.
Yep.
Lyndon B. Johnson.
Lyndon B. Johnson. Now, why are they your worst?
I think it's partially because they're following like what I would consider great presidents. Now, to be fair, I feel like Kennedy died before he could really mess up, but at the same time, I can't really say anything bad about him. You know,
Mhm.
I think if he did a full 4 years, people wouldn't revere him as much as they do. But I still feel like anybody following those shoes, you got big shoes to fill. I think Taft, I've heard bad things about him. I'd probably put him in there too, or the guy that died within 180 days of taking office just because he didn't really do anything. I've heard bad things about Wilson.
Why does that make him? He didn't mean to die.
Well, I didn't want him to die, but it's like it's like you can't be good if you're only alive for this long. You can't be that bad either.
Jeez Louise, tough crowd, Harold.
But I think that just because they're following, they got big shoes to fill. And obviously, like the guy that followed Lincoln was trying to undo everything he did, which okay.
Yeah. So, Josh, to piggyback off you, that would actually be in my top two worst. He just because wow, we actually have the same two worst because it's like all the progress was made
Mhm.
was not that was not expanded upon.
Right. Nixon.
Yeah.
Nixon. Nixon's in the bottom two. Maybe not the bottom five, but bottom 10.
And Harold, I'm going to ask you, who was president during the civil rights movement that kind of just let the South do whatever the hell the South wanted to do prior to the civil rights movement? I'm sorry.
You're talking about Wilson?
Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah, that was Woodrow Wilson, but that was in the 20s.
I would agree with that. Yeah. But
Yeah. So, but yeah,
Andrew Jackson, like he was shitty too.
that's Lincoln's successor.
Right.
Who you were talking about? My thing I would say Wilson, and I would probably say Hoover. No, you had the Roaring 20s,
Mm-hmm.
and you tanked all of that. You just boom through the bottom out of all of that progress that was being made, all of that. Those revenues, that capitalism, where the country was going as far as its economic and how it was growing, and all of a sudden, once you start removing regulations, that's when a lot of gambling starts, and that's when boom, the bottom fell out.
Yeah.
So, I would put those two. One, Wilson, him showing Birth of a Nation in the White House was not a very glorifying event for me, but. And then, like I said, Hoover, who allowed the Roaring 20s to turn into the crashing 30s. But
like a screeching halt, basically. Yeah.
Every time I hear Hoover, all I can say is "damn."
Yeah, he sucked just like a vacuum, huh? I'm sorry.
I've heard
You're not gonna let my bad jokes sit over him.
I've heard a lot of people talk shit about Carter, but I don't know enough about him to be like.
I feel like Jimmy Carter gets way more.
He got a bad rap.
Deserves, and I don't.
He just turned.
Now you got to explain to me, Harold, if you got time, because I was too young. Why does he get like? I just it's.
Well, you have two significant things happen. With him, you had the oil crisis, which led to hyperinflation, and he couldn't get that down in time enough for the election. In addition to that, you had the incident that happened, I think it was at the 70s, the Olympics. I'm trying to remember. I think it was 1980 Olympic Games, where the athletes got killed there. And I forget exactly what country they were in. But because of what happened in that regard, you had some that were captured as hostages. You had and I think Ross Perot and a few other people were sitting there trying to negotiate, but they weren't released until afterwards, if I'm not mistaken. Or either I know some were killed, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm not sure if any were actually released afterwards. But you had all those things that were going on, those dynamics that transpired, which latched onto it, and it happened during his presidency. So because of that, he has gotten a bad rap. But when you go back and look at some of the progressive policies that he did have in place, he's the only president that had it. In the last year of his term, he put, I think it was solar panels on the White House to begin that whole process. And what happened? China took the idea, since America balked at it, and they advanced solar panels, and they're far cry ahead of where we are with that whole innovation.
They're ahead of a lot of things with our innovation. I mean, I can't understand how I can get halfway across that country faster than I can get from DC to New York, because they have these things called bullet trains that we won't invest in.
Yeah.
Well,
Whether-
we got slow trains running in the cars. I don't need a bullet train running into a vehicle, huh? Come on.
is that why Jimmy Carter spent the next 40 years doing such amazing work to restore his reputation?
Yeah, and he just turned 100.
Yeah, I saw that
Happy
too. Yeah.
birthday.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Awesome, guys. I thank you both for being on. Everybody, you can catch us next week. Oh, wait a minute. Marcello said he was a bad president, no excuses, which I don't know which president he was talking about because I didn't see his comment 19 minutes ago.
Jimmy Carter. Yeah,
Jimmy Carter?
I think so.
Well, I mean, no, well, like Harold's saying, Harold didn't, if he's talking about Jimmy Carter, there was no excuses given.
Right.
He just talked about the two really bad things that happened. And sometimes when really bad things happen during your presidency, everything else you did is kind of overlooked.
Well, and that's what's hard about being president, right? Because like a lot of like the financial success that began under Trump really could have been credited to President Obama, and a lot of people don't see that, or a lot of the economic downfall that Biden encountered could have been credited towards Trump. You know what I mean? Like I think they say the first 4 years you're cleaning up from the guy before you, and then the next 4 years that's when you're progressing or regressing.
You're either cleaning up or ruining. Well, see, that's why it's important for people to talk to people who can connect the dots, right? Yeah. Like for instance, on this show, we had a person that said, "Well, gas prices went up when Biden closed the pipeline," and Dave educatingly showed us the breadcrumbs from why that happened. So it's the difference of just saying things and running with it, but actually like educating yourself into why something happened during someone's tenure. Everything that I had to defend Trump one time, and Harold was there when I did it. When people talked about the conditions that immigrants in Southern Florida are in, when they were trying to show cages and run down places, and I was like, wait. They're like, Trump hates the immigrants so much. This is what he's doing. I'm like, wait. I'm from Miami. Those conditions have been like that since I was a child. So even though I don't like the guy, I can't put that on him. Cello says, when we're talking about the president of the strongest country in the world, nothing happens just coincidentally.
He was referring to Carter when he said he was a bad president, no excuses. So.
Oh yeah, it doesn't happen, but we're just saying there's some things that even if it's not in your control, if I'm president now and somebody, I almost said a country and I don't want to say a specific country, and somebody decides to take the Olympic team hostage, I could see that coming in my presidency,
And that could have started a war, Yeah. I mean, the American people probably wouldn't have, they probably would be supportive of that war.
But then how do you blame a president for a terrorist group taking certain actions?
Right.
Yeah. Especially if it's a terrorist group that was helped form when someone else was in presidency.
Right.
So it's a muddled area we get on.
But they were free.
And the same
I think of it. They were free.
The same thing goes for Trump. I can't blame every single bad thing that happened during the President Trump. I have my things that I can pick because I'm educated in those areas, but there are some things that are progressed. So what everybody's saying here is kind of the same thing. It's never always just one person, but you are the leader. You take the credit just as much as you take the blame. You got to be able to take this.
They're the one with the most power. So like that's why they're show pony that either takes the blame or gets the credit.
And what Harold said earlier is we really have to, that's why we say everybody focuses on who's going to be president. Who are you electing at your lower level officials? Who are you electing for senator? Who are you electing to Congress? Congress has more power than the president when it comes to these certain policies. The president just signs off when it's passed. So we got to always stop just saying, hey, it's the president. But again, when you're the leader of the country, you got to take the credit as well as you take the blame. Guys, join us next Wednesday because Cello, I'm not ending it. I'm going to let you talk. And next week, because Cello and Dave will be having these same type of discussions. That's going to be interesting, which means, Harold, you need to jump into the chat. But go ahead. What were you going to say?
They don't want me in the chat. I'll be disrupted just because. But no, one other thing I want to encourage your viewers to do is to understand how to do research. Because part of the problem that we have is most people do research to justify their position as opposed to finding out the truth
Yes.
of the position. In other words, for example, John, and I'll use you as an example. You were sharing with me when you were working on your doctorate
Mhm.
and when you had to do your literature review.
Oh God.
You found all those sources that supported
Yes.
your position,
Yes.
but didn't see if there was anything to oppose your position.
So Josh, what
And you
happened?
will never be a well-rounded individual to have any type of discourse if
Right.
you are only one-sided or biased in how you choose to approach this position. In other words, I want to justify my position. I want to be right, as
Mhm.
opposed to I want to be accurate.
Yeah.
And I want to.
And there's
I
people
had-
on both sides of the spectrum,
I
both
had 80
Democratic and
sources. I had 80 sources, Josh, and my professor said you haven't done an exhaustive review. And I'm like, what? So I went back and got like 30 more. She said, you haven't done an exhaustive review. I came back and got 20 more. She said, you haven't done an exhaustive review. I said, well, I'm exhausted. She says, no. She said, you have 140 citations here, 140 articles here, and not one of them disagree with you.
Right.
And I was like, I totally missed the plan. And I want to go ahead and make sure. Cello says, what I mean is to say that Carter's reputation is only consequence of a terrorist attack is simplest. No, that's not what we're saying, Cello. We had a whole conversation about
Wow.
it. We were just pointing out the two big things because I asked my uncle, why does he get such a bad rap? And those were the two biggest reasons why he got such a bad rap. And there's some things. Yeah, and there's some things that he did that were good, but we're never going to hear about him. I don't remember him because of those really two big things. So you are correct, Cello, but that's not what we were saying. We were just pointing out two really big things because Josh and I are young, and we weren't alive enough to know the ins and outs of his presidency. So we were trying to figure out what were the two big things. As a clinical researcher for about 30 years, the principle of research is to play devil's advocate to what I believe is true. That is correct. Yes.
But people don't do that. They try to find an article to back their position so they can be right or feel better about it. I'm guilty of doing that in the past too, if I'm being honest.
Well, we've gotten into the habit now to where, and I'm not saying Cello or Harold or Dave or you, is a lot of people, they just turn on the news and what they hear, they run with it. That's why we talk about immigration. So, the big scary immigrants that are coming in and taking all of our jobs. Oh no, they're going to work on farms and in carpentry and
jobs nobody wants to do.
Right. Illegal immigrants aren't coming to the country and becoming doctors the next day. They're not coming to the country and the next day they're policemen.
Right.
And I always say this, the same rhetoric I hear about immigrants now is the same rhetoric I used to hear about us in the past. It used to be the Black people that were taking all the jobs and all of the things that we hear for immigrants. When Black people got to the status to where we no longer had to just clean houses or work on a farm, those jobs went to someone.
Sure.
So every time there's a sect of people that increase their status, those other jobs still have to be done. And so, anyway, I'm going to start a whole nother topic with immigration. We'll go back with Dave and Harold. Thank you guys for Josh. If referring to Democrats, I agree. Oh, here we go. I'm glad the show is ending.
I've been relatively taking a neutral approach on everything.
Right.
I don't know what that's specifically in reference to. But
The thing that always kills me with anyone is when it's only Democrats or only Republicans. It's like, guys,
no, they both.
I always say this. Both of these people go back in the VP Harris and Trump go back in the green room, shake hands, and laugh at us because they know we're going to yell and argue and talk crap for the next 5 weeks.
Here's what I say, and I'm quoting Lewis Black, a comedian, on this one. He goes, when you go into that voting booth, you have the choice between two bowls of shit. The only difference is the smell. You know what I mean? It's the same thing. And in reference to the media, Denzel Washington said this. He was
that's my favorite quote. So I'm going to say it. He says, if you watch the news, if you don't watch the news, you're ill. Sorry,
uninformed.
You messed me up because you stuck it. If you don't watch the news, you're uninformed. If you watch the news, you're ill-informed. So what do?
Misinformed, but yeah.
And what he says, what you do is you watch it, and then you watch a bunch of other things. You take what everyone's saying, and you do the damn research, and don't just regurgitate.
Denzel Washington reminds me of that stern father. Even when you hear somebody talk about him in a speech, he always looks at them like he's not. He'll eventually smile, but at first he's that very strict, authoritative father that's just okay. What are you gonna say?
Well, he does that because they always try to ask Denzel trap questions. You know,
Right.
they always, and you can't trap the guy.
Yeah.
You know, so he takes that pause. It's called, what does Herm Edwards say? Don't press send. It's called stop, listen to the question, think about it, and now I'm going to answer instead of just spurting whatever's off the top of your head that you want to come out of your mouth.
Right.
All right. Well, Josh and Harold, it was a great one day. I'm looking forward to next week. You both better be in the comments, and we'll see you guys. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you
Nice
for
meeting you, Harold. Take
watching.
care.
We are out.
All right, deuces.
Later.